Welcome back to r/MaliciousCompliance, where a boss demands 100% compliance and gets exactly what he deserves. And the first r/MaliciousCompliance story is titled, "You demand to carpool in my car? Buckle up then." So I was working for a business as a principal firmware engineer. Commute was an hour each way on the best days, leased an EV which would barely get me there and home, but was carpool lane qualified. New coworker lived nearby and proposed that we carpool so we could use the carpool lane and save him maybe 20 minutes. Well, I was not about to ride with him in his car due to his poor vision and subsequent lack of situational awareness. He asked if he could ride with me in my EV. Well, I declined as I did not need him to use the carpool lane and his added extra bulk might exceed the limited range of that early EV. He then complained to our manager who demanded that I accommodate him. Be a team player for once, don't you know? Decided to offer carpooling with him in my pumped up Resto Mod 71 Datsun 240Z on a Friday morning. It turns out that he did not like the volume of my music, the velocity of my car. He ended up taking an Uber home that evening and never bugged me about carpooling again. Yay, team. And yeah guys, if you have any funny malicious compliance stories from your own life, please feel free to share them in the comments because I would love to read them. The next one is titled, "Daycare wants my office to park in our reserved spaces while they use ours too." So we did. Posted on r/MaliciousCompliance by user RelativeSalad1409. My partner and I own a small 8-person company that shares a building with only a daycare. Our company consists almost exclusively of higher-level professionals, a couple lawyers, CPAs, etc., so most have their own large office plus a couple of common areas, conference rooms, and a nice kitchen. All in all, it's about 3,500 square feet, which is obviously a lot for 8 people, but it's necessary for our line of work. Due to the size of the office, the lease has a parking provision which grants us exclusive rights to all 24 parking spots. This is somewhat important. To the story, not our work, we only need 8+ clients. Also important is the daycare's parking lot only consisting of about 10 spots in front of the building. The parents would use our lot to drop off as the daycare's lot would be mostly full with their staff's cars and even some of their staff would park in our lot. I did not mind that at all. We had over a dozen empty spots each day and it was nice to have the mostly happy children around in the mornings and afternoons. Until a month ago. I started coming in a bit later at the same time as daycare drop-off. Our lot was crazy, with parents and kids walking and parking, so I used their lot like they have done with ours for years. First day, no issue. Second day, the manager saw me get out and gave me a piercing stare. A week later or so, I did it again and my car was towed. Not a warning or word from the manager/anyone at the daycare to me or our office. I went to the daycare to ask if they knew it was my car, it's a very distinctive old blue truck, and if some kind of mistake had been made. The manager came out and said it was not a mistake, and in a very rude, demeaning tone her exact words were along the lines of, "Unfortunately, we cannot have the liability of non-staff and parents within our lot, and I'm sure the parents don't appreciate having to walk further either, or an unknown adult like you in the lot." She looks me up and down and I'm a totally normal-looking 30-year-old male. I think so at least. "Don't you have some reserve spots in the back? You should really park there and let us park here." With an eye roll, she walked off. I was happy I held my tongue in front of the children considering how damn angry I was, knowing it was not the time for that conversation. A couple days later, I told the manager while we were outside the office that I wished she would have come to me before towing my car and costing me $600, asked for an apology, and said since we share the backlot and the parents take up almost all of our spots in the morning and afternoon, can I park in the front lot the occasional morning the timelines align? She flatly said no, and basically gave me the same speech she gave me last time, at least not commenting on my appearance this time. I left things for a week thinking it was over until again I had nowhere to park one morning. Having to wait 10 minutes for parents to filter out of our lot lest my car be towed, and who do I see but the manager getting a spot in my lot before me even. I decided to comply with the manager's wishes then and developed a plan. I contacted the building owner and said, or more accurately lied, that due to compliance reasons with the state license we're applying for, we need to have a gate installed with employee/guest pass access only on our parking lot. Our company would of course cover the cost, same-day approval from the landlord. It was installed 2 weeks later. I drove in early that first day after the install, and I tell you, the mayhem was well worth it. Watching from the corner window gave me a perfect view of it all. It started with daycare staff pressing all sorts of keys on the gate to try and get in, trying to park where they have for months, years even. Then their lot filled up completely, parents started arriving, a staff member had to stand at the gate telling parents there was now no access. Their parking lot was basically congested with parents double parked taking their children in. Other parents parked a quarter mile down in another lot at the park our office overlooks. I eventually went down to give the manager a nice little wave and walked back up to my office. She gave me a piercing stare that just made me grin ear to ear. I guess she sent the owner a rather angry email about parking rights to the backlot afterwards, and how it's crazy that one small office gets the entire thing. Apparently, she didn't know that we had all of it. He said him and I may have to discuss the parking provision in the future, and he also did not know the lease gave the entire backlot, but it's not a big deal to him. Not sure why he let me put the gate in though. Regardless, I still have 2 years left on my lease with another option to extend an additional 5, so no plans on moving anytime soon from the office or my 24 parking spots. P.S. It's an office building next to a park and residential homes. I'm in no way endangering these children since they now walk through a quarter mile of grass and playground to get to the daycare. There's not even a street to cross from that lot. If anything, I made the days of the employees and parents better in retrospect. Actually not sure employees can park in the playground lot for that long. Edit, finally figured out how to edit, newer around these parts. To everyone asking me why I didn't tow them, 2 reasons. Number 1, most importantly, I was tired and working 12+ hour days for a few months at that point, and that day she parked there was the last or second to last day of that stretch, and then I'm basically 4 to 6 hours a day for 9 months. Towing a car was the last thing on my mind. Getting into the office and finishing my work was my only goal. Then my partner suggested it when I recounted the story. Number 2, $600 can be a lot of money for some. I grew up fairly poor and know how devastating a towed car can mean to a family struggling month to month. Another day I may have done it, but I'm glad I didn't. And damn guys, to be honest, OP is a really good person. Props to OP. And the next one is the title story, which is titled "Boss Wanted Everything Done by the Book. So I did." So I work as a lab technician at a hospital in Milwaukee, been there about 9 months. My supervisor Derek is one of those guys who panics about everything. 2 weeks ago, state inspectors came through and he completely spiraled. Started implementing all these new protocols that are technically in our safety manual, but nobody actually follows because they are outdated from like 1997. Friday morning he sends this department-wide email in all caps about how we are doing everything by the book. From now on, 0 shortcuts, he does not care if it takes longer. Anyone caught up skipping steps gets written up. The thing is, our equipment sterilization protocol in the official manual requires 8 hours of UV exposure between uses. We have 6 pieces of equipment, we run maybe 40 tests a day across all of them. You see the problem. Monday morning I start the UV cycle on the first machine I use. Derek walks by later and asks why I'm not running samples. I show him the manual, show him his email, explain the math. If we actually follow protocol, we can run maybe 3 tests total per day as a department. His face went through like 5 different emotions. And tries to say, "You know, that's not what I meant." And I'm like, "But you said everything by the book, 0 shortcuts, remember?" He had to call the department head, they had to get someone from compliance on the phone. It turns out that protocol was supposed to be updated in 2015 and just wasn't. Nobody noticed because nobody followed it. We shut down non-emergency testing for the entire day while they pushed through an emergency protocol update. Derek won't make eye contact with me now. My coworker Amanda brought me coffee this morning though, so that was cool. The next one is titled "Boss said I must use my vacation before a month end, but also no one can take time off." So I read the policy. And by the way, Ripe Stars, if you enjoy these malicious compliance stories, please don't forget to leave me a comment and like the video because that would help me tremendously. So my company sent a shiny tiny HR email, the subject line all caps, "Use it or lose it." We had to burn our remaining PTO by the 30th or it evaporates into the sun. Same day, my manager announces in stand-up that due to quarter end, no one can take time off until the 1st. I then asked how to reconcile that and he shrugs and says, "Talk to HR." HR says, "Talk to your manager," so that's a cute loop. So I opened the handbook because I'm a petty librarian when annoyed. Page 14 has this little sentence I never noticed. PTO requests not explicitly denied in writing within 48 business hours are considered approved. There's also a note that partial day PTO is allowed in 1-hour blocks. Thank you, legal team. I submitted 10 separate requests, 2 hours every morning next week, 2 hours every afternoon the week after, a random Friday 3 to 5 to watch a plumber, and 1 full day to visit my mom. I sent the requests in our HR portal, which auto-emails the manager and CCs a shared mailbox nobody watches. Then I went back to my tasks and set reminders. 48 business hours pass, no denial, the portal changes each request to approval, green checkmark, confetti, GIF. Monday comes and at 9:58 I put a cheerful note in the team chat, "Heading out, see you at noon." Manager pings me to hop on a client call. I reply with a screenshot of the policy and the portal approval. Silence. Then 3 dots typing, then nothing, and by Wednesday our calendar looked like cheese. Half the team remembered they also had PTO sitting around and started filling it in little blocks. Meetings kept colliding with green bars, and finance realized that if we didn't use the days now, they would be paid out at separation later, which they hate. HR wrote a new post saying we should coordinate, but that approvals already granted stand. My manager called a huddle to ask why productivity dipped, and I said we are following HR's instructions to use PTO. He said he meant in November. I then sent him the original email timestamped this month. He sighed and said he never thought anyone would actually read the handbook. I used every hour, took my mom to lunch, and my plumber fixed the cursed sink at 3:40 while I drank tea. Next week, a new policy appeared. PTO must be requested in full-day increments during quarter end, and managers must respond in 24 hours. Thanks for clarifying, truly. And the next one is titled, "Is this an order, sir?" Posted on r/ripe stories by user Datally1. And by the way guys, if you wanna share your own stories with our community and want them read in a video, please post them on r/ripe stories on Reddit. Either way, this story happened about 15 years ago during my military service in a combat engineering battalion, not in the US. I was around 20, serving as a communications technician. Our battalion's job was to clear mines and roads so the big tanks with the really big guns could move freely. I was not one of the combat soldiers, I was part of the support crew, usually a mix of lazy or unstable fighters who got demoted, people with health issues, and a few idiots who actually wanted to do the job and didn't care about glory. I was one of those idiots. My specialty was communications. To put it simply, tanks make a lot of noise, you cannot really talk inside them, and you definitely cannot talk with other tanks. That's where communication systems come in, and avoiding friendly fire is a pretty big deal, so I'd been there for about a year and a half when a new commander was assigned to my team. He knew communications, he was sharp, and I liked him, but a few months later our brigade's chief of communications decided to do a surprise inspection. We had 3 days to prepare, which is not a lot of time. For context, our battalion belonged to a brigade. My commander was the battalion's chief of communications, reporting to the battalion commander, but professionally he answered to the brigade's chief of communications. So basically, he had 2 bosses, one operational and one professional. Now, I was just a technician. My job was to make sure all the tanks had working communication equipment. I'd already been through several inspections, and I knew one thing for sure: there's no inspection without the tanks. That is the first thing I told my commander. "Sir, they're going to want to see the tanks." "No, they will only check the paperwork," he said confidently. "With all due respect, sir, I know what I'm saying. They will want to see the tanks." "No way. I need you here helping with the office work." He knew me well enough to know that I hated paperwork. I could do it, sure, but I would be miserable. He probably thought I was just trying to avoid working, so I told him, "Commander, I want to be very clear. Unless you're giving me an official order, as in I order you to stay here and work on the paperwork instead of going to the tanks, I'm going to the tanks to do my job. So is that an order, sir?" He looked me dead in the eyes. Usually, soldiers don't need official orders, we just do what we are told. That was the first time I'd ever said something like that. And then he said word for word, and and I could tell he was holding back his anger. "I command you to do the paperwork and not go to the tanks. That's an order." Well, okay then. I hated the paperwork, but disobeying a direct official order would have serious consequences, so I stayed and did what he said. Fast forward 3 days, the inspection begins. The brigade's chief communications officer walks in, and surprise, surprise, he brought the brigade's chief technician, my counterpart. The technician went straight to the tanks. I went with him. You can probably guess what happened next. The tanks, our bread and butter, were in terrible shape. There were several defects we had not reported because we simply didn't know about them. 15 minutes in, the inspection was stopped. The chief technician looked at me and asked, "What the hell is going on with your tanks? This is a huge failure. You're responsible for this. You'll be facing disciplinary action." I told him exactly what had happened. He looked at me, stunned. "Okay then," he said. He pulled out his phone and texted his boss, the brigade's chief of communications. We left about half an hour later. He deliberately stalled our return, and I did not understand why. Until we got back. Waiting for us were my commander, the battalion commander, suddenly very interested in communications, and the chief of battalion communications. The battalion commander asked me directly, "Why weren't the tanks ready?" I replied calmly, "Sir, I wanted to go to the tanks, but I received a direct official order to stay here and work on the paperwork. I cannot disobey a direct order, sir." I was dismissed. My whole team outside the office, we could hear the yelling. Eventually, everyone left. My commander could not look me in the eyes for days. To his credit, he was not petty, he knew he had made a mistake. And he knew better than to make my life harder after that. He also knows that was a very bad idea. Let's say that usually I was very fast and efficient in my job. 3 days later, he called me to his office, offered me a snack, and asked me to check the tanks. I agreed. The follow-up inspection passed flawlessly, and let's just say my commander learned a very important lesson. When one of your good soldiers says, "Is that a command?" Listen carefully. Sometimes the veteran in your team knows exactly what he's talking about. And now let's move on to the next story. It starts like this. So I used to work as a driver for a freight company. So we used to handle awkward-sized items that no other couriers would touch. We delivered everything from coffins to tractor parts. We also had to collect things from our customers for delivery the next day. This company had a mixture of contractors and permanent drivers. I was a relief driver. I knew most of the routes, so I covered holidays or sickness. The management of the depot consisted of a delivery manager and a collection manager. These two people did not quite see eye to eye, as sometimes getting the stuff delivered conflicted with getting stuff collected. And their targets reflected failures in a bad way. This particular day, I had to cover a contractor's route. I did not know the route, so as we had to load our trucks, this took a little longer than usual. I had around 45 deliveries that day, which is high for this predominantly rural route, and I asked my manager, the delivery manager, if he knew the route. He replied that he did and ordered my route for me. So I was good to go, albeit a bit late. I did say that with the volume I had, I may struggle, and I asked him to keep an eye out for me, and he said okay. I got to near midday and realized that I was not gonna be able to complete all the deliveries, and the collections wouldn't get done either. I also noted that one of the collections was off route and the contractor had a vehicle in that area anyway. I called in and spoke to my manager, delivery, and told him that he had a choice of collections or deliveries. I also asked why the contractor could not cover the off-route collection. I was told to call back later and he'll see if can sort something out. He also said that the off-route collection would have to be done too. I called back later and asked for help again. He said that there was no help available. So I gave him the option of deliveries or collections, as there wasn't time to do both. I'll get to the time a bit later. He categorically said both had to be done. The delivery manager went home, so I called in again and got the collection manager. She reiterated that there was no help at all, so either I failed the deliveries or failed the collections. If that happened, I would have been hauled into the office the next day. So cue the malicious compliance. I called into one of the collections and I asked what time they closed. 6:30 p.m. they said, so I said I'd be back later. I carried on with the deliveries, which took me further away from that collection. At the appropriate time I stopped delivering and drove to the collection. I then collect 2 small parcels and that was all. I then drove back to where I had stopped and carried on delivering. This cost me about an hour. I finished my last delivery at 7:15 p.m. and I had a 45-minute drive back to my yard. As I was leaving the round, I got a frantic call from the collection manager. She was wondering where I was, and I told her what had happened and told her that I'd asked for help 4 times and was told I had to do everything allocated, so I did, and it wasn't my fault that it happened like this. Here is where the trouble really started. The company's trunking system is a fluid one. It depends on trucks leaving the depot at a certain time, and for our depot the cutoff time is 7:30 p.m. I wheeled in at just after 8 p.m. There were 15 pissed off guys on overtime waiting for me to turn up and an articulated truck waiting for these 2 parcels. This wait caused the whole trunking system to be late the next day. My routing was discussed when I got back, as it was questionable at best when I told the collections manager that it was the delivery manager that organized it. There were angry emails between the delivery and collection managers, and I would imagine that the logistics team would have demanded an explanation too. Asses were definitely kicked. The next day no one said a word. I was not on that route, and going forward, well, for a little while, they either helped when I asked or didn't get me to do as much. Also, as I had exceeded legal driving time, they had to make sure I went home early for a few days, so a bit of a win there. The biggest trouble these guys had was that they always assumed that the drivers were after an easy day, and even when presented with the evidence assumed that you were still trying to be fly. This time it bit them badly. And the next one is a beautiful petty revenge story, and it is titled Petty Revenge for Parking in My Spot. So I'm not sure if this scenario would fall under petty revenge or malicious compliance, but I will post it here. This happened a couple years ago when I first moved into our apartment community. To set the scene, there are a ridiculously low amount of guest parking spots available. On the site that I'm on, there are 3 apartment buildings with 24 apartments each, so 72 units total. There are 3 parking stalls available marked for guests. 3, 1 for each building. There's street parking available as well though. Well, anyways, one day I get home from work and I find that someone has parked in my parking stall. I was pretty pissed about that. Thankfully, our leasing office is very encouraging of tenants calling and utilizing the tow company. In fact, in our leasing package given to us when we moved in, it had the towing company phone number, and we get emails encouraging us to use them if someone is in our spot. So that's exactly what I did. After a while, I decided to go out to see if I got my parking spot back, and indeed, I did. However, when I went outside, there was also a group of 3 women, grandma, mom and daughter, looking around with great concern. The daughter was freaking out, saying, "Oh damn, where's my car? Where's my car? I have to be at work in an hour." When they saw me, one of them asked, "Do you know the number of the towing company?" I said that I didn't and wished them luck. I checked my mailbox for mail and went back inside with a strange satisfaction. Later, I parked my car back in my stall. Moral of the story is FAFO, play stupid games, get stupid prizes, and all of that. And yeah guys, thank you for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you again tomorrow.